Tom McQueeny. How old are you now?
I am 24.
24.
Mm-hmm.
So you're coming up on the quarter.
Coming up on the quarter, yeah.
Is that a big moment for you in your life?
Is the quarter a big moment? I don't think so. I would say, like, it's big in the sense that I don't want to think of myself as, like, 25.
Does that feel old to you, or that
it's feeling a little bit old? Yeah. Just a little bit. Thankfully, got a very young face. Like, that's true. We do. So I'm constantly reminded of not being that age, which has its own frustrations.
You're still getting carded everywhere you go?
Oh yeah, of course. I get carded for R-rated movies.
Oh no.
Like, it's enough of an embarrassment to go to a Jackass movie, but to get carded for it is its own kind of hell.
Well, that was one of the only good parts of, well, I shouldn't say it that way. I got to be very careful of how I say things, but one of the great things of being married and being in a relationship with somebody as beautiful as Melanie is that I never got carded again, and I don't look any different.
Yeah.
And that is a crazy thing. Our father doesn't even look like he's 70 almost. Yeah. It's unbelievable. So you just returned from what felt like a military
deployment.
That's the word I'm looking for here. How long were you gone?
So I left, I believe, January 28th, and I got back 2 days ago.
So you're almost gone 2 months. Did you plan to be gone that long?
No. I roughly planned to be gone about a month, and I felt bad about that. I thought I could do it in 3 weeks. But one thing led to another. I added destinations. I added marathons. That was part of the trip, that I was going to do marathons every weekend. And when I got to California to see this friend that I from college that I, for one reason or another, hadn't gotten to see in the 3 years since, like, graduating, that was a factor of the plan too. And when I got out there, she said, "Hey, you're in California now. Would you want to just road trip to Seattle at this point? You're already here." And I said, "You know what? I am already here." That's a very persuasive argument.
And Seattle's basically like driving back to New Jersey.
Yeah.
Not quite. Maybe halfway.
And so I did that, and then when I got to Seattle, there was a friend who wanted to, who asked me if I would be her +1 to a wedding in Dallas. So I agreed to that, and then by that time, my friends in Austin messaged me saying, "Oh, are you staying for South by Southwest?" And I said, "Well, I'm here, so I guess I'm doing that."
Huh? Yeah. Sounds like a Fringe Oscar movie. This whole situation. So, what was the original plan?
The original plan was marathons, go see Zoe, the college friend, and then come straight back.
So where were the marathons planned? Where were you going to those?
So I didn't really plan out the marathons. The only one that I specifically planned out more than 4 days ahead was the Skydive Ultra. It's this race that's held in Florida and Texas. The one I went to was in Florida. And the premise of the race is that you skydive, you jump out of a plane, and when you land, you start your race.
Did you do that?
So I was I was all geared up to do it, but in the 15 minutes that I was waiting, clouds rolled in, and this guy said, sometimes we do have to ground the planes for now. Sometimes it clears up in about 20 minutes. It did not clear up in about 20 minutes. He said, "Yeah, no, maybe you just want to do your race." And so I said, "All right, my adrenaline's surging right now, but I guess that's what I'll do." And I went to the starting line, and I was doing the marathon. There were also a couple of other races held at the same event or held at the same location. And at the starting line, this the guy who's holding the race says, "Hi there, marathoners. Just so you know, this is a race that's primarily created for our ultra community. There's also a 30-miler and a 50-miler and a 100-miler that's being held here as well. So the course was drawn for them. So we will have your marathon times, but to do the full 4 loops of this course, you'll be doing about 29-ish miles. And I'd never done a marathon before. And that was a fantastic thing to hear at the starting line. And but I did it. I got it done. I was like broken for 2 days, and then I moved on through the South, got to Texas. Second one was in San Antonio. It's part of this series of like dinky 10 to 15 people marathon races that's held every week. It's called I Ran the Flagship, and I'll have you know that I came in second. To that race of like a handful of people, because I had originally planned to have Cliff Bars before my race, because it seems like my stomach does well with that. Mm-hmm. I did not plan my time well, and the only thing left in my car before I started my race was not Cliff Bars, but Little Debbie's Cosmic Brownies.
Oh.
So just think about the most processed thing you can imagine, and I consumed about 3 of those. And I went out, and I obviously had to go to the bathroom, so that slowed me up. Number 3 was in Arkansas, and then number 4 was in California, Long Beach.
Wow. So the Florida one is that Key West?
That is a little town called Clewiston, Florida.
Huh. How far down is that?
That is around Lake Okeechobee. So pretty far down, like southern central Florida.
And how many days was that into your trip?
The first marathon?
Yeah.
That was, I found out about this race 4 days before it was happening, and I had to pull the trigger on it like very quickly. So I signed up for it, and then I left, and it took from New Jersey 3 days to drive down there.
And you were going by yourself?
Yeah.
And so how did you'd never really driven like this before. How did you plan where you were going to stop, or?
No, I'd never driven like that before. As you know, the longest drive that like a McQueeny will make is the 5 hours up to our parents' summer house in upstate New York, and much of the time that's perilous. You're like half falling asleep. And so my trip was fueled entirely by red eyes from Starbucks and your occasional Red Bull. And in terms of like how I picked how to stay, I would just like look at what's 8 or 10 or 12 hours away from my starting point, and look at a town, like look at what that town might be, and say hotels near blah blah blah.
So was this all on like Google Maps?
Yeah.
You were just riding it, and you figured I could go 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
And so that would mean day 1 you got to North Carolina?
Yes. No, day 1 I got to South Carolina.
Oh, you got to South Carolina, just over the border?
Yeah, just
and
over
did
the
you
border.
have your hotels figured out, or did you?
I just did whatever the town was, hotels near, and like I just stayed at some like Holiday
Did you
Inn
feel
Express.
completely frazzled? Like the first, that's a hard one. The first day, and you didn't have someone driving with you. The first day you drive that many hours, you're like completely shot.
I was very tired, but a surplus of podcasts and constant caffeine consumption can absolutely get you through it. But,
what time did you leave?
I left at, I think it was 10 o'clock.
In the morning?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard when you have all the energy and you leave, and then you're like an hour into the ride, and you're like, I'm still in New Jersey, and I'm on the turnpike.
Yeah.
And it's just not going that well. And even getting to Philadelphia, it's like 2 hours later, and then you're just not getting out of the area.
It really does
very quick.
Feel like forever to leave New Jersey at any point of like travel, you know?
And Pennsylvania's like that, going west or coming
Yeah, the
east.
entire state of like Utah and Arizona felt like it went by faster.
Well, yeah,
than-
because it's interesting. It's new. And you're just... That's always the hardest part of leaving, is you just have to get out of the known area. But even when you get out of the known area, you're still on like 95. And yes, it's different. It's got a local flavor and a flair, but it's not that different until you really get off the highway. And so when you're going on your own, that's a lot of, did you have to stop a lot, or are you just zoned in?
For the most part, I can lock in really well. I don't really have to stop. I mean, I had snacks in the car, and I think it's probably like a remnant of like dad like taking us up to the summer house. I remember once I was like maybe it was like 3 or 4 years ago. I was taking the dogs up to the summer house, and my dad was was saying, hey, so just a couple of tips and tricks to bring the dogs up. What you want to do is don't stop for whatever reason. You let them go to the bathroom at the beginning and then at the end, but you just can't train them to be ready to get out. And then you want to crank the AC up real high so they fall asleep right away and like cling to each other. And that's really the most convenient way to travel. And I said, oh, okay, wait a second. I distinctly remember those car rides up to upstate when I was a kid, and how cold that car was, and how we never stopped for bathroom breaks. I think you're using the same tricks on us.
Yeah, it is weird what you learn from a parent, both on those kind of trips where I would go on trips with Melanie, and then when you get a child, you have to disabuse yourself of any of those notions, because even with Melanie, I go, no, we don't. What do you mean stop? We don't stop. And it's like, why? Because your father told you don't stop? You don't? No. Or when you fly in a plane, we don't put luggage into the plane. Yeah. It's carry on only. It's like, by whose rules?
And then Mike has this has this story about this girlfriend who came over his apartment, maybe his first adult apartment. And she said, why do you have a whole cabinet full of plastic bags? And he says, well, that's what you do. You keep them. You have to keep them. Don't you have a plastic bag cabinet in your house? And she said, no, that's weird.
When you get to South Carolina the first day on a long trip like that for the first time, and you're alone, you totally get that feeling, because I've done somewhat similar things. I never drove that to that level by myself, but you kind of reach that point where you go, what the hell have I done? There's no turning back.
Yeah. That's definitely how I felt.
And you're in a totally uncomfortable place.
Yeah,
at first.
That's how I felt on the days leading up to the first marathon. And the first marathon was awful. It sucked, and it was really grueling. But after I did it, after I sat in the car for an hour, just like shaking, because the marathoners that I've talked to, they say you probably shake after a marathon because you're just not hydrated well enough.
Right.
I've hydrated well. I still shake. But anyways, so like after that first race sitting in the car, I realized, okay, that sucks, but I can follow through with this plan to do a lot more because I'm sore, but I can do this next week too.
So you went South Carolina, and then you said you were 4 days out from your first marathon. So it was South Carolina to...
so South Carolina to...
it's like Jacksonville, or did you get far down into Florida? St. Augustine?
Yeah, I must have... Maybe I stayed in Georgia?
Yeah. And
that doesn't sound... Maybe I only made it down in 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it was only a 2-day drive. So it's 20. Yeah, no, it's. I'm remembering now. So it's I believe a 20-hour drive down to Clewiston, Florida, and I drove 12 hours the first day, and 8 hours the second day, and I got there the night before the race. So I drove down 2 days before. I got there the night before the race. I got a terrible Cuban sandwich. I stayed in a hotel that made me scared enough to check the crime statistics of Clewiston, Florida. It's not great. Don't look it up. And as a little travel tip, never look up the crime stats of whatever city you're driving in or you're staying in, because it's usually really bad. The first couple of results. Second travel tip: don't come to a city at night. It always looks terrible too.
Yeah. Well, that's a hell of an uncomfortable feeling too.
Yeah.
Because you just have you just have nothing to settle you in any way. Yeah, it's quite a crazy thing. So how did you land on Clewiston? There's a ton of marathons going on.
Well, yeah, no.
Time.
So earlier that week, I had Googled Marathons USA January, and it brings you to this map of all these marathons happening across the United States. And I was looking through this list of the marathons, and then there was this one that said Skydive Ultra. And I said, I need to find out more about this. And that was the premise, that you started with a skydive. And I just thought to myself, there's no better way to start this this idiotic marathon odyssey than with the biggest, dumbest, riskiest one you could possibly do.
How long ago had you decided to do this?
Before I actually did it?
Yeah.
4 days.
This whole trip?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't know you wanted to do this trip that you were gone for 2 months for?
Yep.
Until 4 days before? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why that?
So, yeah. So I was working at a job in Hudson, New York that I hadn't felt great about. It stressed me out. It was like a good job for my age, but it wore me out. And in the process of applying to grad schools, it was just absolutely too much. So I left that job in late December, and my friends were throwing a New Year's party in Austin. So I road tripped down there with a couple of my other Bard friends that I went to college with. And then when we came back about mid-January, I thought, okay, so the next step is I go back to Hudson, I find a part-time job, and I just do that until my lease is out, and then I move to grad school, whatever. And when I got back, I was looking at job listings, and I found a couple of things that seemed absolutely perfect for me in every single way. Perfect part-time job, pays well, deals in subjects that I'd be interested to learn about. Like there's this one hipster wine store called Hudson Wine Merchants that I really liked. And I saw that job and I said, oh, this is perfect for me. And then the thought dawned on me, oh, okay, so I get this job and this is what my life roughly looks like until the lease runs out. And I just wasn't happy with that. Uh-huh. And I said, all right, so I'm not actually ready to be back here. I guess I needed to take a longer trip. And I said, okay, I'm going to go out to the West Coast to see Zoe like I always planned to do. And in the process of doing that, I'm going to have to do something else or I'm going to lose my mind. Like you can only stop at so many locations. I need to be bound by certain objectives or achievements that can push me through. And I realized, okay, so I've never gone across the country before. What else haven't I done that I've always been meaning to do? Do marathons. So I said, you know what? I've got this span of time. Let me just crank out as many as I possibly can. And it's pretty much as short of a time span as possible. I honestly would have done them back to back if that was offered in any part of the country, but I did them weekend by weekend because that's the way they're set up,
Yeah, so I mean that's one of the neat things when you become a young adult who's an adult enough to actually be a real adult is when you realize before you then have a family and kids, that moment of clarity where you say, I can do anything I want right now. This is bizarre. Yeah. No one can tell me what to do. No matter what my job is, I've saved enough money. No, I can do this.
Yeah.
And it's, I pulled that off when I moved to Arizona for a while after college. And it's a pretty liberating feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's, you also learn, which is an important lesson, how large this one single country,
Yeah.
which helps you, in effect, to learn how large our entire planet is. But just starting with our country, it's absurd how big this thing is.
It's absurd how big it is. It's absurd how, or reassuring how diverse it is. And while you recognize the sheer scope of this massive country, you also recognize the importance of the car and the interstate system. The fact that I mean, I was saying this to you earlier. It feels like a superpower that you can just get in a car, lock in for 12 hours, as long as you're properly caffeinated. If you're in that car for that full 12 hours, you're in like a different third of the country. And
yeah, no, I always thought it was crazy how when you go cross country, you just move through entire zones of like desert and the plains. And the weird part, though, when you're going through it, is you don't notice any difference because you're in the plains forever or you're in the desert forever. But like if you were in a movie where they're fast forwarding you through the things, all that you go through is insane.
Yeah, it's true. I always remember looking at, ever since I was able to use like Google Maps, like just playing around with the directions feature and plugging in Mawa or, Hudson, wherever, and then putting something on the other side of the United States, like San Francisco or Los Angeles, and just seeing that number. It's either 42 hours, 48 hours. I want to say it's 48 hours, and just thinking to yourself, wow, 48 hours, that seems 48 hours by car, that seems completely manageable and possible to do by yourself in a car. And I don't know, it makes that massive distance accessible via car.
It's even more crazy when you can think that it's 5 hours by plane.
Yeah.
I remember I used to just, before the times of the Google Maps, we'd have the atlas, the big atlases of, the U.S. I remember just going state by state and going, oh my God, that's where Birmingham is in Alabama. That's where this is. And you're like following all the cities. And being a sports fan, that becomes a part of the mythology in sports, is that this player's from this town, or from this little town, or from this little town. And I used to look up in the towns and see like, oh my God, that's where this guy's from, or this player's from. And I was completely just fascinated by maps. And when you can actually drive over them, it normalizes it in a pretty big way.
Yeah, it does.
And so when you went on this trip, you had no sense of what being on the road. I mean, you did some traveling like that, but you had no sense of what being on the road was like. It's almost like running a marathon in some ways. Like you don't know you can do it until you do it, but you almost got to try to do it. So what did you have on you don't have an iPhone now, right? You have a...
Yeah, I've got a Pixel.
What were you planning to listen to?
Oh my God. So much. So many podcasts. And you have your standard Spotify playlists of pop BS. But I would say that podcasts largely fueled this. And it was This American Life, Chapo Trap House, Invisibilia, Trump Incorporated, Embedded's fantastic. I would say best investigative podcast, journalism, and this
the Mix Minus, of course.
Mix Minus, first and foremost. Then this Chapo Trap House, like affiliate C-Town, and was that Vox the Weeds, 538. And
it's pretty amazing, though, when you're listening to this and the dynamic aspect of the country coming before you.
Yeah.
It's almost like doing ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's almost a semester of school. Like you're just learning all this stuff as you're looking at the land before you. And you probably were able to clear the backlog of entire podcasts no one gets that chance. I mean, we all talk about binge watching Netflix, which is an easy thing to do in a static environment like your home.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy to binge podcasts. I mean, it's easy to listen to a lot of them.
Yeah.
But you never get a chance like that.
That's very true.
And that's actually one of my big worries with the self-driving cars. And we'll see how those continue after one actually just, I think, killed a woman in Tempe.
In Arizona. That's right.
Not meant to laugh, but I think that the audio entertainment gets killed by self-driving cars, because I think everybody moves to video then. Because if you don't have to pay attention to the road, you'll watch video. One of the last bastions of being able to listen to audio content is the car, because it's something where you're locked in on doing a different activity and you can listen, and that is multitasking.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I think that's true. I think that's very true.
It's a crazy thing. So that means you probably listen to, if it's 48 hours of crime, I mean, you probably listen to, did you even track that? Did you listen to like 500 hours of podcasts?
Oh, I can't begin to like give you a number of hours of podcasts that I listen to. It's at least 48 hours times 2, and
well, you went up to the north.
But it wasn't a straight shot. So, and then add.
And did it stink adding a partner in the car because you can't really listen to them anymore?
No, we still listen to podcasts. She liked music more than I did.
Yeah.
I would say that I love music. I have a soul, but I'm less musically inclined than other people.
Well, music's great, but it's just not. It's not. I don't know if the word's entertaining or enticing. It's just it's not as intensely involved.
Mm-hmm.
Like you play a song, you play it again. It's great, but it's almost mindless.
Yeah,
in a good way.
It's an emotional experience, but it's not an edifying one, and that's what I find with podcasts.
I mean, I can remember when our brother Mike and I went across country to get me to Arizona. I can still remember the albums we listened to, because that was before you had Spotify and you actually had CDs. And that's one thing you miss about having CDs, is that you listen to something so intensely because you have a scarcity of it. And maybe a new album came out or whatever. So it's in your player,
right,
and you're just listening to it over and over again. You don't really get that with a digital jukebox where you have everything.
Yeah.
Where you want to move to the next thing. You don't want to keep listening to. But I can still vividly remember listening to those. It was all music when we went across the country. Podcasts would have been great, because I mean, that's really almost, in some ways, it's the American experience merged with what they're made for. And it's just it's the open road. It's just you, yourself, listening to people talk, listening to someone talk to you, and you're just providing the dynamic aspect of the open road before you. I mean, it's really a fascinating thing. Now, when you would get into each town, so you were in South Florida for a little bit, did you know where to go to eat? Were you nervous about what to do at night?
Well, obviously, when you're at a hotel, it's a little bit more milquetoast. You ask the front desk what they think is a good place to go to. They tell you, but those are the kind of like safe, prim, and proper locations, the boring ones. So it doesn't make for a great experience. It's better when you're staying in an Airbnb, and of course, cheaper. Airbnb was the salvation of the road trip. The fact that you can get a private room in somebody's nice house for like $30. And I also like the relationships that you had with hosts, where you'd say, okay, but like, where's the fun place to go? And they'd send you to some dive bar, and it's nice to be there because whether or not you're talking to anybody, you feel like you are absorbing whatever kind of culture that they have there. And so I would ask my hosts what their really preferred recommendation is, and they'd give me a truthful version, as well as using Tinder to go on like dates with people on the trip, just to get that kind of perspective, like what they think is like a fun thing to do in town. So that's typically how I would explore any given town. And then, of course, every so often, there would be certain surprises, like when I was staying in Georgia at an Airbnb, just this room at this house with this like fitness instructor and like I left the next morning. She was very nice, and I typed into Google, what's the closest coffee location? So I went. It led me to this like very cute town, and I'm walking up and down the street, and I get my coffee. I have my latte. I want to take a little bit of a breather. I sit on this bench, and I keep thinking how familiar this town looks. I guess I'm thinking in the back of my head, I guess this is just the iconic image of small town America. And then I said, no, I really don't think that's it. And then I turn around, or like I rounded the corner of a building, and I saw this entire town that was walled off by sheet metal. And I realized, oh, this is the set of The Walking Dead.
It was Alexandria?
Yeah.
Basically? Oh my God. And it was it even like a real town? So
the set is not a real, Alexandria is not a real town. Like, they have security and like that don't allow you in. There is a real town. No, I'm sorry. What was the town that the governor ruled over? Monroe. It's Monroe, I think. And Monroe's a real town, a real functioning town. And like, it's funny. And then I looked back at the real town, and I said, oh, and this is Monroe. And of course, you drive around the town for the next like half hour just saying like, is everything here? Like, I assume this was all a set on like the West Coast.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it was just really, really, really funny. It's like turning the corner in some like back road town in the South and just seeing the Death Star. It's like, oh, they actually built it.
It's so weird. So that's where you came out of South Florida to?
Yeah, that's where I came out of South Florida. And then I made my way to Austin, and I stayed with my Bard buddies for a little while. And then I went south to San Antonio for the second marathon, then further south to Marfa, Texas. It's this hipster artist town in the middle of the desert that I've always seen pictures of. They have a bunch of art exhibits. They have this thing called Prada Marfa, which is this building that looks like a building that sells Prada in the middle of the desert. It takes like 20 minutes to get there, and there's nothing like around. And you get there, and it's not a functioning Prada building, but it's apparently this artist's statement about the ephemerality of materialism. It's made out of all sustainable materials, and it'll be reclaimed by nature in like 50 years. But in the beginning, they stocked it with real Prada materials. And in this trouble for the first 3 weeks, where people from the Texan desert were just breaking in and stealing all the Prada shoes. So now it's like all displays, but it still looks like it's a functioning Prada store. And from Marfa, I went to Fort Smith,
which is
Arkansas. And
isn't that weird to backtrack though, or no?
Oh no, it was definitely weird. I didn't like that I had to do that.
Way.
But that was my first official real marathon. All these other marathons were a series of loops, and maybe there were like 15 or 20 people that did it. This one had hundreds of people, and it was one 26-mile loop in Fort Smith, Arkansas, that has the luxury and privilege of being able to shut down the city because they're Fort Smith. And that was a lot of fun, except for the fact that it was like 35 degrees, and at mile 10 I went to grab water from an aid station, and the cup of water fell straight through my hands because I couldn't grip anymore.
Oh my God. You were in Arkansas for a little bit though, right?
2 days.
And so where'd you stay there?
First night I stayed in a Walmart parking lot.
The Walmart?
Not the Walmart, but
Benton?
Yeah.
Bentonville, I mean.
I'm sure one of the OG Walmarts. And which was my go-to kind of option for when I realized I had to stay like 2 nights in a city, but I didn't want to pay for lodging. Just so everybody knows, Walmart has a company-wide policy that you can stay there overnight. And
for campers, right? But they allow a car to just pull up?
No, they allow cars. I mean, it's probably more in the...
was there a society of other people who you saw doing the same thing?
There was. And you just... for that society. You don't want to get too close to them. You don't want to be so close to anybody sleeping
It's
overnight.
like tailgating where people are cooking out on little grills.
No, nobody's cooking, but like you go to sleep, you see that there are a ton of cars in the back lot, and then you wake up the next morning and there are a ton of cars in the back lot, and it's the same cars, and you realize, okay, so we're in the same boat here.
We're in the same vehicle.
In the sense that we're in the same boat in the sense that we had to sleep overnight. You may be homeless. I might just be tripping, and it works well. I mean, I would have to find like the correct space to like, because I bought a bunch of blankets from Goodwill, and I asked a couple of barred like hippie friends what the preferred method of like decking your car out is in order to sleep in it. Like, what's the comfiest thing to do? And they, like, more than one person said without fail, so you go to a thrift store, you buy padding for patio furniture, and you can use that as a mattress. I said, that's very... Thank you for that knowledge, but that's very specific. I don't know in what other context you might be able to use that, but again, thank you. And I slept really, really well in my car.
So when you get to Arkansas, then you run your marathon. They usually start in the morning, 6 a.m.
This one started at 8.
So it's over by about noon.
Yeah.
And you were still there. That was your second night because you were there the day before?
No, the marathon was on a Sunday. I stayed there Friday night at the Walmart, Saturday night in a hotel because you have to like do that right. And did my race. After like I shook uncontrollably at the convention center where they were like passing out Gatorade and everything, and multiple people coming up to me saying, "Are you okay?" And me saying, "No, it's completely fine. I just need to do this. I'm really cold." I went back to my car and I set out for Amarillo, Texas, which was the stopping point for me going to Santa Fe.
Well, so when you go to, so you came into the Walmart from Austin?
Yeah.
And you got there at what time?
I got there at 9:30.
At night?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's late. That's uncomfortable though.
What do you mean?
Like to be out, you're at a real person's house in Austin, and then you drive all that way, which is what, like 10 hours?
Yeah. So it's uncomfortable in the sense it's like you shouldn't. And I've said this to multiple people. Like, if you get somewhere and you're sleeping in your car, don't go to sleep at 9:30. Nobody goes to sleep at 9:30.
Right.
Like, so I mean, what you do is you go out, you get some dinner, do it you have to do for food, come back to the Walmart, set up shop in the Walmart somewhere, and just feed off their free Wi-Fi until about 10:30 or 11:30. Maybe you download some podcasts that you can listen to, and you get back to the car. I bought some cheap curtains from Walmart, and I get in the car. I already have my blankets, my like padding set up. Then you just tack the curtains onto the side windows, just because that's the thing that you have to control for and figure out, because you just can't have the windows open because you can't get to sleep if you're thinking about people looking in on you. And you just tack up the curtains, and it's so cozy. It's very cozy.
But so, all right, but you got there at 9:30, and then you're just sort of in that uncomfortable position of, I have nothing to do right now. Are you tired? Are you listening to stuff? Are you watching stuff?
I would listen to podcasts. Yeah.
Were you able to get the Wi-Fi feed from the Walmart out to the parking lot?
Yeah, if you park close.
Well, that is nice though. If you could like fire up some Netflix and you're like,
yeah, it's not quite
here's some
Netflix.
Yeah, here's some Mindhunter here. Doesn't Walmart have its own little like streaming? Is it Voodoo or something? We get free Voodoo here. Oh, but there's that feeling where you just, I get that sometimes where I'm in something that's just a little suboptimal. And I mean, it sounds like you planned to head for a Walmart.
Yeah.
But you have that feeling where you go, have I made a terrible mistake right now?
No, the terrible mistake moment was when so after Georgia, I went to Alabama to hit up this location that I found off Atlas Obscura. That's my go-to website for all traveling, because they have like weird and odd locations across the USA. And so the location that I picked was the movie set, or the abandoned movie set for the movie Big Fish. In the movie Big Fish, there's this fairy town or fairy tale town called Spectre where everything goes right. It's paradise, whatever. So they actually built that on this island in Alabama. And you pay like it's owned and operated by these two like sweet old Alabamians, and you pay $5 to get on the island and sleep there. And you get out there, it's the town. They're all a bunch of like cardboard, like props. They look straight up like houses on the outside, and there's a herd of about like 50 goats that roams around the island. And so you drive over a causeway to get to the island, and when you get to the island, all of these 50 goats swarm your car, and they almost bring you to the spot where you're supposed to like set up camp. And so I set that up. I put up my tent and everything. I got some food from town. I got a couple beers. I drank a little bit. It was very nice. It was about like 65 degrees, 70 degrees on this like island. I set up my tent. At that point, I didn't have anything to sleep in my car. I just set up a tent outside, and I had a really nice time. Again, listen to podcasts, got drunk, like chased the goats around. It was okay. There was only one other car on this island, and they never came out of their car, probably because there was a drunk guy running after goats. And so finally, I was tired around 11:30. I go to sleep, and then I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning because overnight it went from 70 degrees to 30 degrees. And I was like, oh my God. And so I ran out to the car. I put like so much like gear on, like sweaters, fleeces, coats. I looked like the Michelin Man, and I like lied down and I had my gloves on. I said, okay, I just can't leave now. I have to wait till 8 o'clock, for God's sakes. Like I like paid to be here. And, but in those hours from like 4 to 8, I was like, I made a terrible mistake.
There's like nothing that solves you. It's like, oh. That's out of control. It is amazing, though, the way it shows you like the breadth of podcasts, that they're just these downloadable things. They follow you wherever you go if you want them. They're always with you.
It's so easy, you know. They don't take away that much power from your phone.
No.
It's just an audio file.
Yeah.
And
I remember when I did a little sort of half cross country trip. And it was when Sirius XM was out, and you had that feeling because you were just hooked to a satellite, and you could listen to the one show as long as you had a satellite connection, which was pretty much the whole time you're driving. And that was an amazing thing because usually when you go on these trips, you're going station to station and you're waiting until that radio station runs out of its range, and then you move to the next one. And there's something interesting to that as well, picking up the local feel with the radio station, but having that constant connection to the one thing you're listening to feels so modern. Yeah. And podcasts are the best for that because you're just like listening, you're pressing pause, you're pressing play, you're picking it up, and it never leaves you. And you have them downloaded the whole time. They're not going to save you from anything.
Yeah.
but they're with you.
Yeah.
So like when you're in Fort Smith, Arkansas by yourself, are you even talking to people? Are you going out there at all, or are you just? It's the middle of it all.
Yeah. I definitely wanted to. As I said, like my go-to is just finding whatever the dive bar is and seeing if I can talk to people.
That can be a dangerous strategy, though, too.
It's fine. But so that's usually my go-to. But for Friday night, like if I'm sleeping in my car, I shouldn't be drunk. And then for Saturday night, because it's the night before the race, I definitely shouldn't be drunk. So for Fort Smith, I didn't really talk to anybody. I didn't talk to anybody, but the other notable event about the night before the race was I got my pasta. Like I walked out of the hotel, I got it. I was going up to my room, and there was I don't know this for a fact, but this is what it seemed like. There was a father-daughter cotillion, one of those things, in the convention center or like in the meeting space at the first floor of the hotel, which I thought was like quintessentially Southern. Said, of course, this is happening here.
Oh my God. That is absolute craziness. So it looks like Fort Smith is right on the border, though, of, is it Oklahoma and Arkansas or Texas?
I think it's on the border of Oklahoma and Arkansas.
So that means that if you were headed to Amarillo, you rode right through Oklahoma City.
Yeah, I did.
Did you stop there?
I did stop there.
Did you go to the memorial?
I did not go to the memorial. What I did stop at was there's this trippy exhibit or trippy surrealist art exhibit created by one of the lead members of the Flaming Lips. He created it. It was an Atlas Obscura entry. I went there. The building's gorgeous, but of course, like for whatever reason, because they're artists and they have no sense of organization or direction, I think I gathered from reviews while I was there that it's been shut down or like nobody's just operated it for like half of a year or like a year. And it was so tough to see because like the outside's gorgeous, but I could see inside that I wanted to be there so badly, but it just wasn't open. And I don't think it had been open for months. I did get to see or go to this other trippy surrealist art exhibit called Meow Wolf in Santa Fe. I don't know if you've heard of it. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's this former bowling alley that was bought by George R.R. Martin, and he paid a bunch of surrealist artists to just go nuts with it. And nuts they went. So you get to this place, you buy your ticket, you walk in, and as soon as you walk in, it's like this warehouse that's meant to look like a residential suburban neighborhood at night. And there's this house, and you walk in, and you're there with other people who've paid for tickets, and one by one you start to see people disappear into the fireplace. You see them disappear, like open up the washing machine, get in, and disappear. People who open up the fridge, get in, disappear. You go up the staircase, somebody pushes on a bookcase, and they disappear. So eventually I start to follow all these people, see where it goes. Like if you go in the fireplace, it brings you to this pink cave with mastodon bones that if you hit, they play notes. If you go into the dryer, it's like a slide that dumps you out into a natural landscape, but composed of like pillows and carpets. If you go into the fridge, it brings you into this white purgatorial space that you keep walking into, and it becomes narrower and narrower, and then you come at the other end, and it's supposed to be this alien teleport space station. And at a certain level, it almost gets too overwhelming, too immersive. Yeah. You say, this is cool, but I have to take a breather. So you exit out the house, and you look for this sign that says exit, and you open up the exit door, and you just enter black with like a crystal that's shooting out lasers, and you think, how is this not a safety hazard?
Maybe he needs to get back to writing Game of Thrones. This is a little intense.
But so you go to all these different spaces, these different like quote unquote dimensions, and it's cool. It's just really trippy. And then you come back to the house and you're looking through all these papers and these books that are left around because it looks like a functioning house. And you realize with these like journal entries, there's actually a story, like a meta narrative for why this place exists. And like you realize why there are people, these like paid actors who are walking around in lab coats. So everything starts to come together. Everything starts to make sense. The sole thing that I couldn't square while I was there, and it took me an extra 2 hours to figure out. I got there at 11, like I left at 5. It took me an extra 2 hours to figure out the one thing couldn't get. These normal looking people, like dads and moms, like dads with like thick New Balance sneakers, walking around with these black marks on their face, and it took up like a large portion of their face. And like I saw like 1, 2, 3, 4, and I go up to the first one, and sometimes you can get clues by interacting with them, right? And so like I go up to the first guy, say, so what's brought you here, as vaguely as I can? And the guy says, oh, just the freeway. And I said, okay, but what do you think about this place? And the guy says, oh, it's very it's very strange, don't you think? And I said, well, yeah. And I was like, okay, that was weird. And I go to the second person, I interact with them, pretty much the same thing, just like, yeah, no, like I think it's really cool. It's like, all right. I go to the third person, I'm interacting with them, and halfway through it, I figure out this isn't part of the exhibit. It's Ash Wednesday. They're just Christians.
Oh my God. What the hell are you doing with those black marks on your face? This is crazy. Isn't it nuts when you think about going across from like Fort Smith, you said, to Amarillo? You go through Oklahoma City. Isn't it nuts when you drive across the country how many cities are skyscraper cities in this country? Mm-hmm. How many you drive through, you go, where am I? Yeah. This is like a real city. Yeah. And you go, oh my God, Topeka, Kansas, you know? Yeah. It floors you that this is all like one simulation. Yeah. And all these cities have commerce going on and their own business cycles and all this stuff. It's nuts. Mm-hmm. And it makes you feel a little insignificant. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or egotistical, that like you think that the poles of the country are the West Coast and the East Coast, you know? To a degree they do. I mean, it is something else being in New York, but you go through some of these cities and you go, look, I understand Denver, I understand St. Louis, I understand some of the cities that are as big as I think they are. Mm-hmm. And maybe because they have pro sports teams, so you see the when there's games in those cities and they show the scenery from the city, you come to understand it. But then when you go across the country, you're just like, what is this? Yeah. This is like a real, this is the capital of whatever. Like, there is some real action going on around the country in the middle. Yeah. It's pretty insane. Yeah, it is. Like even Amarillo, like it's not like skyscraper city, but so you went there and you stayed there overnight? Yeah, Amarillo. That is West Texas. That is like the crazy part where like the part of Texas pops up and they're like, this exists for Amarillo. Yeah. I really only stayed, like passed through there. I stayed in an Airbnb for like, again, like $25-$30 with a lady who had great reviews, but the room was very particular. It had pictures of dogs all over it, like all sorts of dog art. It was called the Beetle Bailey room. And I entered the room and I was like, all right, heavy on the dog theme, but you know what? I'm a dog person, so I guess it works out. But I realized that it's called the Beetle Bailey room because it's named after her like dog that died. And there's a little memorial placard. Oh my God. And, so I obviously I Snapchatted that and I said, best room ever. But from there, I woke up the next morning, check Atlas Obscura, because I'm like, maybe there's something here. There are a couple things there, but the two things that I went to were, it's called Cadillac Ranch. It's a series of like Cadillacs, again, like middle of flat farmland, that have been cut in half. They stick out of the ground and they're graffitied all the time. And then the other thing I went to is called Ozymandias on the Plains. I think it's done by the same artist who did Cadillac Ranch. And they're just large legs that stick out. It's supposed to evoke the whole, or speak to the Byron poem, Ozymandias. So that was pretty cool. And the time I was going, there's nobody there. It's just funny that these things exist. Like I'm like hopping fences because nobody's around and taking pictures next to them. Is the way up there around Amarillo? I forget if it was to the west or the east, where they have the enormous like cross farm, like where they have the enormous like Christian crosses. Oh my! Well, around. I mean, you can see it from like miles away. Yeah, I mean that sounds like Texas, but
there's so many cross farms like from Texas all throughout the deep south, and some look some are as tasteful as you can be with a cross farm, and some look imperial and almost like ominous. Like I've seen crosses like lit up with lasers.
Oh my God. And then you went to Santa Fe.
Santa Fe.
Do you remember going there when you were younger? When we went to
I thought I did
New Mexico.
Yeah, I thought I didn't, and then I was there walking around the town square with a friend who said, "Do you know what the deal is with this Loretto Chapel?" And I said, "No, what's the deal?" And she said,
1400s or something.
Or no, she said, "Well, so there was, it's like, yeah." She said something like, "It's an old chapel, and apparently it's like sacred because there was a carpenter who came through who constructed this staircase." And I finished her sentence. I was like, "Oh, with no nails." Oh yeah, no, I guess I have been here, because I remember finding it funny that like the implication being that like Jesus had his second coming to just build a staircase.
Santa Fe.
Yeah.
That's a different place.
Yeah.
Santa Fe is totally like different than the U.S.
Yeah.
It's got a totally
different vibe, and they have like very strict building codes about how to fit the aesthetic.
And how many days were you there?
2 days. First day I stayed in a Walmart parking lot. And it was the morning after that I realized, while Walmart's policy may be company-wide, certain Walmarts do take exception. I woke up the next morning untacking like my windows and my curtains. I did happen to see a cop like pull into the parking lot, and I said in the back of my head, "What are you gonna do? Company-wide policy." And so I get out of my car to download some more podcasts and also brush my teeth. So I'm walking into the Walmart, and I see a bunch of cop cars giving out white pieces of paper to other cars that I remember seeing there last night. And I just quickly turned around, did a 180, and as calmly as possible walked back to my car to get out of the lot.
Wow, so they were dinging people up?
Yeah, they were.
For what?
Well, I realized as I was walking back to the car that there were giant signs that said no overnight parking.
Oh, that's lame.
It's really lame. And so that's how I stayed there the first night. The second night I stayed at this Airbnb, a private room with this old British man named Christopher, who took a very long time to explain the lock system on the door, and also invited me to play Jeopardy with.
Oh dear.
And I thought it wasn't. It wouldn't be polite of me to join him and obviously like humiliate him.
Well, thank God you're not Dad.
Yeah. Well, I told Dad the story, and he said, "Oh, really?" Because I would have humiliated him. So from there, I went on to Arizona for one night. That was the only tough thing about Arizona. There was so much more I wanted to do, but I had to get to California.
It's very far. It's just you look at the map and you go, "Well, I made it this far on the East Coast, so I'll easily be able to make it." But like the scale is way off, and you're just like, you're like, "How long does it take me to get out of New Mexico?" And there is nothing here, because you constantly think. I think it would be one thing if you were just dropped in New Mexico, and then it's like, "Oh, this is great. This is like a whole nother look," or dropped or landed in a plane.
Yeah.
But when you slowly evolve through the country, you don't notice the disparity in the environments as you do if you're just put there, or if you're just like watching Breaking Bad and it's like, "Oh, okay, this is it." But when you go through it, it all makes sense. And so nothing really differentiates itself to the point where you catch notice. And so it just feels like nothingness forever.
Mm-hmm.
So you're all right, so you went to Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Do you stay in Flagstaff?
Stayed in Flagstaff.
It's a very nice place.
It was a really nice place. I got there in a snowstorm, actually. The only snowstorm that I had the whole trip. And I went into my hotel. I lost my voice after Santa Fe, so I could barely speak. I sounded like Marlon Brando. And I somehow managed to order a pizza. I get the pizza, I get some wine. I was very, very tired. And I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning. Like my dinky little hotel is right in front of this massive mountain. Like that completely leaves me without words. And from there, I went to Long Beach, California.
That's a really long drive.
Was it like 9 hours?
Flagstaff to, yeah, I mean, I guess you just totally, you lose track. I loved when you would like when you cross the border into California and you're like, I'm in California. This is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And then did you have that thing where you come up to California and there's almost border patrol to the level as if you're coming from Mexico to America?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And it's like, and they go,
it freaks you out. Yeah.
And they're like, do you have any vegetables in here? That is the weirdest thing. I remember driving up and I'm like, wait a second, did I make a wrong turn?
Yeah.
And you can't see stuff. I remember I drove there in the dark one time because I was living in Phoenix and I wanted to go see the band Shai Hulud, who were going to be playing in LA on a Saturday night. And I had work on Friday, and then right after work, I was just going to, it's like that just liberation. I can do whatever I want right now. And I'm in a whole new area. I got a whole new tri-state area here. Uh-huh. And I was like, I'm just going to drive to LA. This will be amazing. And so I left work after like 9 o'clock and I just went as far as I could. I gained an hour and then I stopped in the middle of the desert in California. I forget which town I stopped in. But when I was driving out there, I remember middle of the night, I cross over. I'm like, oh my God, did I miss something? Am I at the border? And they literally stop you with just a stern look. Do you have any vegetables or fruit in here? I'm like, I don't think so. Are you sure? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. Okay, go on. Like they're that militant about their produce. That's a very weird thing. And so you then move through there.
Well, so I get to Long Beach. I'm 20 minutes away from my destination. I'm going to stay at this friend's house that I met last summer. And I'm 20 minutes out. And then I'm like suddenly I just hear this sound outside my car that sounds like a semi, like burn, just, like, the way it sounds when a semi brakes or something.
Yeah.
And there was a semi next to me, and I thought, oh my God, that car or that guy is screwed. And then he gets off the exit, and the sound is the exact same. And I said, oh no,
brakes, he was just
I'm screwed. Oh. And I thought, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. And my car starts to fishtail, and I pull over to this very narrow shoulder on this highway. And I look out my window and I see that there's smoke coming out like the back of my car. Oh. And I get out and I look and there's like no tire there anymore. It's an axle, but the tire's gone. Oh. And of course, what a normal person would do is call AAA. My first thought is, oh my God, I got to call Dad. I called Dad. It's like 9 o'clock. It's 9 o'clock in California. It's midnight or 1 in New Jersey. I don't know. And I call, no response. I call a second time. My dad picks up. He says, hey, how's it going? And I said, oh, it's going pretty good. Honestly, I'm a little bit scared right now. I guess I blew a tire, I guess. And he says, okay, well, what's the tire look like? I said, non-existent. It's gone. Like, it's just an axle. He said, okay, well, how much is there? I said, Dad, there's nothing there. And he said, okay, all right. Not a problem. And I think you know this about Dad. Dad is a fearmonger in 9 out of 10 situations, except for the one where things are actually going wrong, in which case he's like logical, like sound, slowly paced tech support. He's like, okay, so are you in danger right now? How far into the road are you? Okay, so what you're going to want to do is pull in a little bit more. I'm going to pull the AAA number for you. Are you safe right now? Okay, all right. And so he's walking me through this as like I'm an anxious mess. And he says, all right, do you have your card on you? And I said, I don't have my AAA card on me. I'm pretty sure it's in like the backpack that's in Maui. He said, all right, well, we're going to get that. In the meantime, you're going to call this number. And you're just they're going to take care of you. Don't worry. And I said, all right, like, great. He said, but we're going to find that card for you and we'll give you the policy number. I said, all right. So I call the number and it says, hey, are there any hot singles in your area? and I quickly realized that this is an outdate or like an expired kind of phone number. I started to get mad for half a second. Then I realized, what am I doing? Like, he's helping me. I can just Google AAA California and see what comes up. And so I'm able to reach them and they fix the car. I go to, I get to my friend's house and I stay with her for a couple of days. Then I do the fourth marathon in Long Beach, which was a nicer marathon. I mean, it was,
of course.
Yeah.
It's like beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it started at 6 a.m, which was fantastic for me because that means 5:30. So you're starting most of it in darkness, which is, I'm a prime night runner. And that was great. And after my race, I was pretty sore, pretty nauseous. That's the way I usually am after marathons. And I went to Ojai, California, this cute Californian town that was I had completely forgot was like devastated by the fires.
Oh God!
The whole mountains, like all the mountains, were black, and the town was mainly rebuilt. The reason I went there was because the owner of the hotel that I worked at, he said, "Oh, we're looking at a second hotel in Ojai, California. It's like the Hudson of Los Angeles." I said, "Oh, I guess that'd be interesting to see." And from there, I went to Morro Bay, met up with my friend, and then we decided to go to Seattle.
Just like that.
Just
so
like
you
that.
thought you were coming back home?
Yeah, I thought I was coming back home.
Isn't it crazy being in a place like that? Was your first time in California?
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those crazy feelings. Life is going on here all the time, and I never even had a sense of it. And it's a whole different vibe. Like it's a different society. I mean, I remember being there, and it's like Mike and I would be in a PF Chang somewhere. It's like, man, life is. You have those almost childish thoughts. Life is going on here.
Yeah,
I don't even know what's happening right now. These people are living their lives, and we're just moving through, and it just feels so cool to be in California.
Yeah.
It's where it's meant to be.
I really liked Northern California and Oregon. Just the Pacific Northwest and the coast along there.
It's weird the way Northern California is kind of subsumed into the Pacific Northwest too. California is so big.
It's so big. Yeah.
It's just, I mean, you drive forever in it. And then you drive forever. You know you're going to drive forever from LA to San Francisco. But the amount you drive from the Bay Area to get to Oregon is like, what the fuck? This is so big. How much is going on up here? It's pretty out of control. Did you guys stop in Portland?
We did not stop in Portland. We did stop in San Francisco. Zoe's brother lives there, works for I think it's a PR company. And, or the PR branch of some tech company.
Yeah.
And he works there. We went to an arcade bar out of this old movie theater, which was really cool. And I can't believe how beautiful the parks in San Francisco are. They're absolutely out of control. And I was talking to you earlier about what the great natural landscapes that I was able to see, and one of them definitely was the redwoods. Of course, I mean that's the go-to answer, but like it's just they are absolutely massive. And
it's absurd what this country holds.
Yeah.
I mean, the landscape is so different than, for instance, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Even where I live, it is so different that it makes like New Jersey feel like amateur environment.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, people are so close together, and they're like little towns, and our houses are right next to each other, and then you just see this massive expanse of every kind of like tree and ocean.
Yeah.
And it's astounding, and how much free space is out there, and how and just the meaning of space and population density. It's like it's insane when you get back home.
Yeah.
Just how tight everything is. So then you get all the way up to Seattle.
Oh, but before I go to Seattle, me and Zoe had met up with our a Bard dropout friend named Will, very sweet kid, and he told us about the Squim. Well, I don't know if it's in Squim, but it's called the Olympic Game Farm. So it's basically a zoo where you drive through and you pay an admission fee, and they also sell bread at admission, and you drive through, and your car's like swarmed by peacocks. At one peacocks and goats at one portion, then you get to the next portion, and it's bison and llama, and there are constantly signs that say "Don't get out of your car." Also, keep driving your car or you will get swarmed. It's like something out of The Walking Dead.
Oh, God.
And they come up to your car and they stick their heads in, and like you feed them bread, and sometimes they take the bread and move on. Sometimes they get kind of aggressive and they're still in your car, and you just have to like just take your foot off the brake and just see what happens.
Oh my God.
And then you get to a portion that is elks and like a different type of goat. And I will. And then there's another portion with bears. Not like the bears don't walk around; they're still in cages, but you can get up close and you can still throw bread to them. So I did frisbee bread to a bear. I can say that. I can say that I've been licked by a bison. I've also, I would say like harassed by a bison. There was a portion where a point at which like it had its head in the car. It was licking my jacket with its big black tongue, and then licking the side of my car. And like it was many days that I had just bison slobber all over the side of my car. And from there, we took the ferry over to Seattle, and I sat in on a class at University of Washington at the Evans School. To this grad program for public administration that I'd been accepted into. And that was a lot of fun.
Isn't it weird to think like you could go to school there and you could have just flown there, but how much of a different appreciation you have for a place when you got there this way. It's like trains, planes, and automobiles, with John Candy.
Yeah. It's very true.
I mean, it's crazy when you get there that way, because it's all so meaningful. You saw the ground and the environments change to get there in a way that made sense. And that's another one of those places. There's nothing like Seattle in this country. I mean, the mountains, the water,
oh my God, yeah,
environment, the huge it has everything there, and it's so in the middle of nowhere.
The mountains make the Catskills look like hills.
Oh my God, I know.
They're impossibly big.
Yeah, and you don't see them for most of the year, but then when they do pop out, it's crazy. I went there on one of my alone trips to Portland and Seattle, following the Nets. Yeah, Seattle's a great city. Well, it'd be good if you can go there. So you were there for how many days?
I was there for, I believe, 3 days.
Okay.
I believe 3 days.
And then did you come all the way back to Long Beach?
Well, no. So I didn't go back to Long Beach. So an aspect that I've left out about the trip. So I'm a young man. I have a certain app called Tinder on my phone. And I've been using that on my travels like all the way through. And one of the people that I had matched with and gone on a date with was this person named Bailey. And a couple days into my California trip, I got a message from her saying, "Hey, crazy idea. Feel free to say no. I know it's out of left field, but I have or my friend has a wedding in Dallas, and I was wondering if you'd want to be my plus one. And I said, yeah, why not? Sure, let's do it. And she said, oh, that's fantastic. All right. So we planned when I would pick her up in Santa Fe, and we'd road trip together to Dallas. And then she would go back with her friend, her coworker, who also lives in Santa Fe at the end. So I could go straight back to Austin. And
Jesus, that's 2,000 miles. Oh my God. Oh, this country's just too big.
It's so big.
It's so 2,000 miles. 30. You talked 48 hours going from New Jersey to Long Beach, and then it's 32 hours from Seattle to Dallas, and you feel like you're barely halfway across the country that way.
It's ridiculous.
Oh my God! So basically, the neat thing with that is you go through a whole nother subsection of the country that you hadn't gone through. You're going through Idaho.
That's correct. The only time, and I beautiful landscapes, different from the other ones that I had encountered up to that point. But I would say the only place that I really stopped in the midst of that was the Bonneville Salt Flats. The Bonneville Salt Flats are where they hold the World Speed Trials in the summer when it's dry. And there were some dry portions when I went, but during the winter, snow and precipitation accumulates on the surface of the salt. But because it's salt, there's only a solid inch of water on these surfaces for miles and miles and miles. So it creates this really interesting effect of almost having a sheet-like mirror on the ground for miles all the way up until these mountains. And it's one of the more beautiful things I've seen on the trip, next to the redwoods and the Texan deserts and this place called the Fern Canyon in Northern California. And it's just not like anything else. I would highly recommend it whether it's to take a photo or it's during the summer where you can drive your car very, 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 very fast.
It's kind of neat how on the way Santa Fe actually is if you were to go from Seattle to Dallas. Mm-hmm. It's only just a slight bit off.
Yeah.
You would go through Albuquerque anyway. God, that's crazy. I mean, is your car still standing?
My car has done fantastic.
How many miles did you add to it on this trip?
I don't know. At least 5,000, maybe 10,000. I don't know.
Well, if it's 2,000 just from Seattle to Dallas, you probably put 10,000.
Yeah. My car, the dependable, not great looking, but lovable 2005 Toyota RAV4 has done marvelously. As I said, the singular problem I had this whole trip was the tire blowing out, and that was probably because I just hit something on the highway outside of LA. It's done so well. I love it so much.
I literally can't imagine. I mean, just that 32 hours, there must be no podcast left to listen to.
Oh, no. There are always more podcasts.
That's actually a sad understanding when that happens. You realize it's just, as much as you want it to feel like it's limitless, it's oh man, there's so much that I listened for, what is that, 150 hours? And I didn't even make a dent on the internet of podcasts. Oh my God. And now can you vividly hear certain segments with a certain, deserts or certain scenery?
Oh, when I recall a certain podcast, or?
Yeah, do you almost there was some meaningful podcast moment that you're listening to and it hooks in with the scenery you remember at the time?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely something that happens. I'll reflect on something that I learned from a podcast, and for some reason, even if it's night, I can remember where I heard that, like what part of the country I heard that in.
It's unbelievably crazy. And that's pretty much all you did. Like, you didn't listen to local stuff or...
No. But yeah, it does, like, traveling so much across the country does give you a sense of, like, geographical whiplash or, like, disorientation, in the sense that you can be in Texas, I'll be in Austin, and somebody does something a little bit arrogant, and I say... typical Californians, and then I realize, whoa, no, oh God, I'm not in California right now. I'm in Texas, or I'll see something. It's like, oh wait, what state am I in? Like, am I in New Mexico or Washington right now?
Well, it gives you a good feeling of traveling entities, whether they're like sports teams or traveling bands or all that, and how open everything in it is, and how much you have to hold on to where you are to even know where you are.
Yeah. And then there was getting gas in Oregon. The first time I went into Oregon, I was getting gas. I got out of the car, and I was starting to, like, load up everything, and a guy was, like, walking over to me angrily. I said, sorry, I should know. New Jersey and Oregon.
Like, the two states.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And he was like, you should know. He said it like that.
It is funny, though, how you grow up in New Jersey, you don't know any different. And then, I mean, you go to college in New York, you get around, and when you go on a trip like this, the place where they help you do it is the exception.
Yeah.
And there's something liberating to just pumping your own gas constantly, too. It's just nice to jump out and do it.
Yeah.
So you get to Dallas, and that was the last stop before home?
So I get to Dallas, I go to the wedding.
And so you only knew this woman from the trip?
Yeah, from the trip.
That's, like, really weird. So you only met her in Santa Fe.
Yeah, so I met her in Santa Fe, and so that would have been our first date, and our second date was a 9-hour road trip to go to somebody's wedding.
Wow. That's putting a lot of faith in the process on her part.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, he's going to make it from Seattle. Oh, my God. That's crazy. And do you still talk to her?
Yeah, no, I've been texting her.
That's so weird. Like, you'll never really talk to her again.
No.
Unless you ask her to marry you. Wow, that's weird. It's like an Oscar movie. So, Dallas is over, and then it's home.
And then the funny / sad thing about our road trip there was on the way out there, or maybe, a couple hours into the road trip, she got a call from her mom saying that her grandpa had a stroke, and he was on life support.
Oh my God. And
she said, I'm so sorry, I have to talk to my mom for a little bit. And I said, no, do what you got. I'll pull over, like, do what you got to do. And she talks and everything. She comes back to me. She says, yeah, they're gonna take him off life support. They're just like no brain activity. And I said, as long as all the family is there to make that decision, and if it's stipulated in his will, I mean, that's what's gotta be done. And, like, I hugged her, and then she says, oh my God, this is like a terrible indie movie right now.
It really is. Well, that was like when we were in New Mexico for a family trip, all of us. And then we went up to Arizona. No, it was New Mexico, right? Although Sedona, no, it was Sedona, because that's Arizona. I always forget. They're both, like, centrally placed, and then there's a major highway going up. Mm-hmm. And we all went to Sedona, and that was when our grandmother passed away. And we happened to all be together in a weird foreign place.
Yeah.
So you get to Dallas, and that was the last stop.
Then I went to Austin after that, because my friends, because I was originally planning on staying a day with them just to see everybody. And my friend Julia said, dude, you're here and it's South by Southwest. You obviously have to stay for a couple of days. I said, all right, so I guess that's what I'm doing. And stayed for South by Southwest. I went to this party that was also thrown by Meow Wolf at South by Southwest with these like, it was at a bar with these major electric artists or like electro artists, and there were people walking around these alien costumes like hugging you.
Oh god.
And the other cool thing that I went to was there was this music festival that was thrown at Willie Nelson's ranch.
Huh.
And on Willie Nelson's ranch, there's this other abandoned movie set. Like, it looks like a Wild West town, and it was really fun. It was really cool because me and Julie got free tickets because her boyfriend works for this Austin-based vodka brand, so he gets tickets to everything. And these tickets cost like $80 to $100. But it's completely like, and we didn't even have to pay that. But even if we did, it would have been worth it because you pay it, and everybody's serving alcohol for free after that. Just multiple booths of like mixed drinks and beers and different kinds of beers and everything. And it was so much fun. The one thing, the sole thing that I regret that I couldn't partake in that was also happening at South by Southwest was apparently, I don't know if it was HBO, but it was probably HBO.
Oh, with the Westworld thing?
With the Westworld thing.
Oh, yeah.
So they had shuttles where they were picking people up from bars and bringing them into the middle of the desert and like dressing them up in full cowboy attire and saying, "Welcome to Westworld."
Oh my god, yeah. I read about that. That's crazy. So that was your last stop, though.
Yeah. Oh, and then the other crazy element of Austin that nobody paid much attention to, and I'm glad, because at the end of the day, if you're paying attention, if you're concerning over it, then you're giving terror power. But the mail bombings was happening while I was there.
Oh my god. Yeah, it always feels like things find you wherever you are. So then it's 26 hours to home.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long trip still. How many days did you break that up into?
3 days.
3 days.
Yeah, first day was 6 hours. I drove through.
Did you go back to Fort Smith?
No, yeah. I went to Texarkana.
I love the name of that place.
Yeah, just
Texarkana,
so
Arkansas.
Lazy. Yeah.
And then I loved Arkadelphia.
Arkadelphia, yeah. So 6 hours there. This really nice drive through warm, beautiful Texas farmland. And the next day was
Nashville or something, or
I guess
Tennessee.
After that, I went to Eastern Tennessee. Eastern Tennessee, like right in the border of that and Virginia. And from there, I went straight home.
It's crazy. So it's 2 months. And it's funny because there's two parts. One is that you don't know how you can't be restless anymore. Like that you can't just do this again. That's a hard thing. But two, you're almost at peace with whatever you do locally. Like you're not missing anything anymore.
Yeah, because you can see the beauty and the strangeness to your home now, and how it's kind of comparable to everything elsewhere.
You traveled to home too.
Yeah.
So home is as much of a travel destination as Seattle or Long Beach or Santa Fe. It's another stop. And home feels different though.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? Like you see it totally different. It feels small, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, it feels like that scene.
It's like manageable.
Well, it feels like that scene at the end of The Lord of the Rings, where they're all coming back to the Shire, like covered with jewels and gold, and nobody cares. And it's small, but yeah, no, it's manageable.
And did you miss something over the 2 months?
Did I miss something? I miss pasta. Like I miss good Italian food. It's really only here.
Did you read?
No, I didn't do any reading.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
For 2 months. because it doesn't make sense to do it, right? Because you're so focused on the road all day that you can't.
Yeah.
And you get enough consumption in the audio, but
exactly. You're driving or consuming audio or just doing something.
And were you getting through any shows? Do you even have a tablet anymore?
My tablet is back in Hudson. I didn't really watch anything.
Really? Wow. It's a hell of a life. And it's all been confined to about an hour and a half here.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Well, good. You got it to tape.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to go up and get ready for a snowstorm after all that nice weather.
Seems about right.
Cool.
Yeah.